They say family will always be there, but what if, after 70, even family disappears? An old clock ticked slowly in the corner of the dimly lit room. The walls were bare, pale, and stained with the weight of time. A single chair faced the window, where the rain tapped with steady rhythm. Margaret, 72, sat hunched over, her hands trembling against her knees. The house was quiet, too quiet, as though the silence itself pressed against her chest. The air smelled faintly of dust and old fabric, a reminder of years gone by. She listened, waiting for a sound, any sound, but none came. The first painful truth was isolation. Friends who once filled her evenings had either passed away or drifted from her life. The phone on the table was silent, its black screen reflecting her tired eyes. The second painful truth was invisibility. When she walked outside, people rushed past her as though she were made of glass. At the grocery store, no one met her gaze, no one asked her how she was. She remembered the warmth of voices, laughter at the dinner table, now only echoes in her mind. The third painful truth was the betrayal of her own body. Her knees ached when she rose, her eyesight blurred under the harsh glow of the lamp. The once simple act of climbing stairs now filled her with dread. Every creak in the floorboards reminded her of fragility. The fourth painful truth was memory. Photographs lined the shelves, faces frozen in time, smiling back at her. She reached for one frame, her fingers brushing the cold glass, and her breath caught. Her husband's eyes stared at her, kind yet unreachable, as though mocking her loneliness. The fifth painful truth was silence. Not the gentle silence of peace, but the suffocating silence that screams inside the skull. She pressed her palms over her ears, desperate to block it out, but the silence grew louder. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to move closer, stretching long and thin. A sudden knock shattered the quiet. Her heart leapt into her throat, and her body froze. She stared at the door, the sound echoing again, louder this time. Her breath quickened, and her chest tightened as she struggled to rise from the chair. The knock became pounding, violent and urgent. The entire house seemed to tremble with each strike. Margaret's hand shook as she reached for the knob, her pulse thundering in her ears. When the door creaked open, the hallway was empty. The rain had stopped, and the world outside was still. But a single wet footprint marked the threshold, glistening against the wooden floor. Margaret's eyes widened as she stared at the footprint. It was large, much larger than her own, and the shape was strange. The toes looked elongated, pressed deep into the wood, as though something heavy had been standing there only moments ago. Her throat went dry. She gripped the edge of the door, trying to steady herself, but her knees quivered beneath her. The silence returned, heavier than before, pressing into her ears until it rang. She looked out into the night. The street was empty, washed clean by the rain. No lights shone in the neighbors' houses, no sound of cars or voices. Just the thick, suffocating stillness of a world that seemed to have forgotten her. Slowly, she closed the door, locking it with trembling hands. Her breath rasped in her chest as she leaned against the wood, listening for any movement outside. Nothing. And yet, she felt a presence, something that had not left with the fading knock. She turned and glanced at the wet footprint again. It had begun to fade, the water sinking into the wood, leaving behind a faint dark outline. Her stomach tightened. She shuffled back to her chair by the window, but sitting did not ease her heart. Every shadow seemed alive, stretching and curling along the walls as the dim lamp flickered. Her eyes darted to the clock. The hands ticked, slow and deliberate, each sound sharp as a hammer against her skull. She thought of calling someone, anyone. Her sister's number came to mind, but she had not spoken to her in years. Her children, grown, busy, distant, rarely answered when she tried. The phone sat lifeless, a black mirror reflecting her frail image. Her chest tightened again, not just from fear but from the hollow ache of abandonment. She whispered into the room, her voice weak. "Please. I do not want to be alone tonight." The words fell flat, swallowed by the heavy air. Then, she heard it. A faint creak upstairs. Her head snapped up, her breath catching. The sound was slow, deliberate, as though someone was dragging a foot across the floor. She froze, every muscle tense, her ears straining. Again, another creak. It was not the house settling. It was footsteps. Her heart pounded so hard it shook her ribs. She rose from the chair, gripping the armrest until her knuckles burned white. Her legs trembled with each step as she moved toward the staircase. The air felt colder now, heavy with a dampness that clung to her skin. She reached the bottom of the stairs and looked upward. The shadows at the top seemed darker, thick and impenetrable, as if something stood there, watching. "Who is there?" she whispered, her voice breaking. No answer. Only silence, thick and waiting. Her hand reached for the banister, slick with sweat, her fingers trembling as she took the first step. The wood groaned beneath her weight, echoing through the empty house. Halfway up, she stopped, her ears catching another sound. Breathing. Faint, ragged, but unmistakable. It was coming from her bedroom. Her heart hammered, but she forced herself onward, each step a battle against the trembling of her body. At the top, she turned slowly, her eyes fixed on the bedroom door. It was slightly open, a thin line of darkness spilling into the hallway. The breathing grew louder. She could smell something now, a damp, earthy scent, like wet soil mixed with decay. Her throat closed as she stepped closer. Her hand pushed the door gently, and it creaked open, the sound sharp and shrill in the silence. Inside, the room was dark, the curtains drawn tight. The air was heavy, suffocating, pressing down on her lungs. She fumbled for the lamp switch by the bed. Her fingers brushed the cold metal, and with a sharp click, the light flickered on. The bed was empty. The room was still. But the window was open, rainwater dripping onto the floor, leaving a small dark puddle. Her chest heaved as she stepped inside. She turned toward the mirror on the dresser. Her reflection stared back at her, pale and gaunt, eyes wide with terror. But then, the reflection moved. Not with her. Its lips curled into a slow, twisted smile. Margaret staggered back, her breath caught in her throat. Her reflection tilted its head, watching her with eyes that were not her own. She gripped the edge of the dresser, her knees threatening to buckle. The smile widened, teeth sharp and glistening, too many teeth for any human mouth. Her reflection raised its hand slowly, pressing its palm against the glass. She gasped as the surface of the mirror rippled, like water disturbed by a stone. The hand pushed forward, fingers sliding through the glass as though it were liquid. The cold air of the room grew icy, her breath turning white in the dim light. Margaret stumbled back, clutching her chest, as the reflection stepped forward, half its body emerging from the mirror. Its eyes locked on hers, hollow yet burning, filled with a hunger she could not comprehend. Her scream caught in her throat, choking her, strangled by sheer terror. The creature's wet footprints stained the carpet as it dragged itself closer, the same shape as the one she had seen downstairs. The truth of her loneliness pressed down on her in that moment. No one would hear her. No one would come. The silence of the house swallowed her cries as the figure stepped fully into the room, dripping water onto the floor, leaving the mirror dark and empty behind it. Margaret stumbled backward toward the corner, her hands pressed against the cold wall. Her body shook violently, her breath sharp and ragged. The creature tilted its head again, mocking her own movements, a twisted echo of the woman she had once been. It whispered then, its voice rasping like wind through dead leaves. "You are not alone anymore." The words slithered into her ears, heavy and suffocating, a promise rather than comfort. The lamp flickered once, twice, then went out, plunging the room into darkness. The sound of dripping water grew louder, surrounding her, filling every corner. And in the pitch black, something cold and wet brushed against her hand. Her heart stopped. Her scream finally broke free. But the house remained silent to the outside world. No one heard. No one ever would. Morning light crept slowly through the curtains, pale and gray after the long storm. The house was quiet, but not in the same suffocating way as the night before. The shadows no longer moved. The dripping water had stopped. On the bedroom floor, the photographs lay scattered, their glass cracked, their faces staring upward in silence. Margaret's chair by the window stood empty, tilted slightly as though someone had risen from it in haste. The clock still ticked, steady and unbothered, marking the passing of time no one was there to witness. The mirror on the dresser reflected the dim morning, its surface calm and still. Yet if one looked closely, very closely, a faint outline lingered within the glass. A figure seated by the window, watching, waiting. Her features were blurred, soft, as if half faded. But the shape was unmistakable. It was Margaret. Her eyes, hollow yet calm, gazed outward with an expression of quiet acceptance. The house did not feel abandoned anymore. The silence was no longer empty. It carried presence, a weight, as though the walls themselves remembered and held her. Outside, the rain-washed street remained still, unaware of what had passed. And within the quiet house, loneliness had been replaced by something else. Not comfort. Not peace. But presence. An eternal presence, bound to the place that had once echoed with absence. Margaret was no longer alone. And the house would never be silent again.